Welcome back, friends. Hopefully you've done your breath work and you're feeling ready to engage with today's session. So I wanted to start by showing you how you can take this practice with you. Travel, if you will, because today's conversation is going to be about how you can use this practice not only as self-regulation, as we've been talking about being mindful and thinking about what you usually are thinking, but also how can you balance the outside life and the inner feelings that you have. And sometimes you can use these sorts of practices if you're sitting through a class or a staff meeting, or any other places where you might have to sit still and stay engaged, but you might recognize that you have an energy level that's going to make that feel challenging for whatever reason. So this might be just a little way to sow and let go in those places. And how can you do that? Well, I have a little bag, and I'll turn it over so that I don't advertise for this, but I bought a little something, like a sleep mask actually, and it came in this lovely satiny kind of little bag. It's a little drawstring bag, and you could make your own little drawstring bag. And I usually fold any of the projects that I'm working on. If you've been with me, then you know this is my finished one. Just kind of fold it up about however size it goes in there. So for this one, now if I had my needle threaded, I would kind of tuck it in there and fold it over, but I don't have my needle threaded, and I'll show you how I'll take that along with me. So go ahead and fold it up. You can see my work on the back side, and then I'm going to put these things inside of here. Now, other things that you need to take with you are a good pair of scissors. These are my favorite little gold ones. I also really love my bird ones. They have a little case so that they don't poke through things or poke you as you're reaching in and fumbling around for that. And you'll need some thread. I usually have 2 or 3. I like them on these little cards because they're easy to just kind of stuff in there. I showed you that a couple of days ago that I have these, and there's other little tabs like these that are cardboard similar to this. Some embroidery thread actually comes already on here, but mostly it's in like a little hank. So you need all these things. And I think I've shared that my daughters and I made something like this. This is just kind of a little to-go kit. Now, if you don't have something like this, you could probably have like a little Ziploc bag that has a pair of scissors in there, and then maybe a little slip of fabric. I'll show you. We'll make one really quickly. We'll call it a needle keeper. And really, if you have like some scrap, this is scrap fabric that I'm using to make some special Christmas wrapping cloths so that we don't use up so much paper. Maybe that'll be something to do for another day. So I'm just going to fold it in this way. And so whenever before I had this, I would just take a few needles in here, and I have several different sizes there, but you just kind of poke them in. Maybe it's 1, maybe there's a couple of different sizes you want, and quite literally you can just fold them in there. Then they're less likely to poke. If you have something else like a little hair tie or something you want to put around there so they stay closed, it's usually pretty okay, especially if then you can tuck them back into your little work too, so then you're all protected and it can go in there. So that's one way. But this is kind of nice because it has a pocket, and again, you can, it's got a variety of things for knitting and stuff like that. But I wanted to dig down in here because if you have, I don't have one, here we go. If you have a spool that you're using, well, you could just tuck that in there, and I do all the time. But if you can't and you want it flat, then I have some of these little paper tags, or you can cut out some cardboard and just kind of wrap some thread on there. So sometimes in mine, I just kind of keep certain colors that I use a lot, or a color that I just need a little bit of, and I'll just tuck it in there rather than taking the whole spool. Got my stitch ripper in there. I don't think that that's anything that you would want to take or need to take along. And then what I'm digging for is this needle threader. So again, you don't need a lot of equipment. I would say folding your project into a little bag, thinking about one pair of scissors, or they have some thread snippers, taking along your needles, a needle threader if that's a tricky part, and then of course your thread, and some way that is portable for you and easy for you. And they get kind of tucked all in there. For this little case, and I found a pattern, I guess, on Etsy, and my daughters and I made our own little sets. This little set's really nice because it fits really nicely, kind of tucked right on the side there. And then I can just slide in a couple of these little flat threads, and then I'm ready to go. And I can take this little bag. Now it can be smaller, especially if you have like a little bitty project that you're working on. And that's how that works. So it can be pretty easy and convenient. Tuck it into the car. Sometimes I've been waiting on my kids, or I'm waiting for a class or a meeting, and I just kind of pull it out. Sometimes I'll keep some really small ones, not always quite as big as this. So that's that. So again, welcome. How's your day? How are you doing getting into this day or this week before winter break? Now I know some of you actually will continue to work all through the first part of next week. And then some of you are going to be done for a week or two, starting this Friday. Now I will say, going back to this idea of taking your project along. Oh, I can't believe I did that. Okay. Spoke too soon. I would encourage you to go ahead and pre-thread your needle so that you can just pick it up when you're ready. That's something I was going to talk about next week, but we'll get to it a little bit now. Pre-threading makes it more enticing. I don't know if that's the best word, but that's the word I'm going to use. Enticing. So that whenever you're ready, you can just pick up your needle. You don't even have to thread it. There's something about having that already done and taken care of that makes it just fine. And then when you're ready, you can start wherever you want, and you're good to go. Because there are some spaces. So I participated in an online festival that was specifically geared towards stitching and fiber arts and crafts. It's so much more than that, but that's where we'll stop with describing it. And it was a community for a full month where we met if we could. It was not in the United States, which is where I am. We would meet and talk about stitching and about what it does for us and how much we value it, and how those who don't necessarily engage in it, either frequently or ever, might not truly understand why we love it. So really kind of like talking through and elevating this practice. And it was really lovely because I guess I'm middle-aged. I'm in my 40s. I'm not that old. And I know a lot of people still think of these sorts of practices as something that older people do, but there's so many younger people than myself. I mean, my daughters are less than 13 and they enjoy doing these things already. So, but this idea of self-regulation came up, and I admitted that I was always envious of those students or colleagues of mine who would bring their knitting. Maybe you have a colleague like that who brings their knitting. I always thought that felt so brave, and I could understand why they might want to bring it. I could see the benefit to them of having that in their hands and working on it. And those of you who are educators and understand self-regulation, and you know about fidgets, fidget spinners, who hasn't heard of those, fidgets for the hands, all sorts of different things, self-regulating. Well, adults need those too. And so I admitted in this group that I always wanted to be that kind of person. And I don't know, I guess in my mind I felt a little bit embarrassed about it. It just, I didn't trust that some of my other colleagues would see the value in that, or they might kind of tease me a little bit about it, even though they knew that I loved doing this sort of stuff. And so after being part of the group, something about being around other people that love the same things you love, isn't it? Just something about that. Just kind of gives you permission to love it. For even if we don't need permission, sometimes we just do. And when you have that, and then others are encouraging you, you know, if that's something that you really wanted to do, then you should try it. So I did. I have an online class that I have been taking in my doctoral program, and a lot of our classes have been online. And so during the lecture part, between taking notes, I have been knitting socks, or at this particular practice of not making a product, not making anything, and just engaging in this. I feel like I have been so focused. I do set my work down and take notes when there's some things that I feel like I won't remember, or I just need to draw something that will help me remember or better understand, like an example. Then I'll set my work down and do that. But otherwise, I have been amazed at how much better I actually learn. It's really focused, because there's something about just having your hands busy, I think, and not necessarily looking straight on at someone who's talking, or even if you're working in a group, there's this idea of a sideways conversation. Not necessarily side conversations, but sideways conversations. And I think you don't really even have to be part of a conversation for that to work for you. So there's something to be said about just having your hands busy. It's a little bit grounding, is what I said when I talked about it to the group. It was kind of a grounding piece for me. Being in social situations, even with people that I really know and love, sometimes it causes some anxiety or some discomfort, and something about engaging in this practice and sewing and doing this work seems to kind of alleviate that a little bit. So maybe not for everyone. I'm speaking for myself, but in case it helps you, or in other places, if you want to take this to travel, then there you go. So I think we're going to end here now, and I will leave you. And when we come back, it will be the week before Christmas, and I will have a couple of different ideas to share with how you can add to this and do some shape, and we'll sew in different ways. We won't just sew in one direction. We'll try some different things, because variety is the spice of life. And while this is meditative and soothing, it's nice to switch it up a bit, just a bit, and we'll do that next week. Okay, my friends, have a great week, and I'll see you soon.